Alright, so today's topic, winches. So, right here is my Quadratec Q9000 winch, and as you'll notice, my winch cable is wrapped around my bumper. Why'd you do that, you goober? This is why. She don't work no more. What the fuck? So, for some reason my winch decided to just stop working. Thank God it wasn't when I was stuck out in some mud or something. I actually decided to take it out to the backyard because I was tired of the messy winch, and I'm like, I'm gonna rewrap this thing. So I take it all out, and I winch about halfway, and I'm like, oh fuck, now I gotta reposition the truck. So I move the truck and get ready and go to winch, and that happens. It just doesn't work anymore. Doesn't move, there's no amp draw, there's nothing. Because generally, if the solenoid doesn't work, then you won't get any voltage to any of these wires over here. And if the motor doesn't work, but it's stuck, usually it'll whine, but you'll hear the battery draw. It'll mine just doesn't do anything. It's acting as if the motor wasn't even connected. But I'll show you guys how to test your winch out and figure out what's going on. But the first thing for sure is to obviously make sure that the switch does something. And going off the fact that the solenoid clicks when you hit the button, that's good. You also need a good battery, so let's check the voltage on the battery. Alright, so hooking the probes directly up to the battery, we get 12.5 volts. So, that looks good. So, we have decent battery voltage. The next thing you could do is to make sure that you have continuity between the battery posts and the terminals on the winch to make sure that the connections aren't messed up. When I took these rubber boots out, they were actually filled with water. So if you look, you can actually see like rust deposits on there or whatever. These boots were just completely filled. It's very strange. Not quite sure how that happened, but yeah. So, once you make sure that you have proper continuity between your lines so that it's not like cut or damaged or something between the battery and the winch, the next thing would be to test the solenoid. So what I'm going to do is hook the multimeter up and see if I have proper voltage to these terminals when the switch is flicked. Okay, so here's the multimeter. Negative is just going straight to the battery. And then you can take the positive probe and put it on any one of these three wires. And when you flick the switch, you want to look at the multimeter on voltage and see what you get. Let me get you in there you go. So when you flip it, you notice that you get basically the battery voltage. It only has like a 0.2 volt drop, which is pretty damn good. So that was the green terminal, and all the other terminals check out pretty much the same. It's hard to get these to stay. That's probably loose. It was reading 12 when I was holding it. I can't really. I cleaned off the red one, so the red one should be good. Yeah, see? It's weird though, flipping it in or out gives the same voltage on every single port. A little strange, but yeah, by doing this you can see that the solenoid works. So, with a working solenoid and no amperage response from the battery, sounds like the motor's kind of shot. So, I called up Quadratec. So I bought this back in December 2013, and it's now August 2014. And told him I tested out the solenoid, and it seemed pretty good. And he shipped out a motor, and it got to me literally the next day. So, awesome on their part. Definitely recommend the customer service. So, let me go grab that motor they gave us, and let's hook it up before we take this thing apart. Now, there's two different kinds of winch motors, and it's going to be a little different depending on what kind you have. If you have a permanent magnet motor, those only have two posts. You have just two posts, and you'll have two that go into the solenoid and two that come out of the solenoid to the battery. Hooking, like jumping a cable, like take your positive cable on one and your negative cable on the other, will make the winch go out, and if you swap them, it'll make it go in. Now the kind that I have is a series wound motor, and if you notice, there are 4 connectors on here. There's a green one back there, a yellow, a red, and the ground. So the ground goes directly to the battery, and the positive cable actually goes directly to the solenoid box. And then you have these 3 wires here. So on your series wound motors, the 2 posts over here that are closer inboard to the motor are the stator wires, and then over here are your 2 field wires. So the way to test this, you have your ground wire go directly to the negative cable on the battery. So one of the fields goes to negative. The other field is going to get jumped to one of the stators, and then the other stator is going to get positive 12 volts. So if you try testing this and you hook the negative over here directly to the negative and you take the positive to this positive, you're going to do very bad things. From what I hear, if you do that and your motor still works, you're going to weld your motor together. And I don't think you want that. So, again, one of these goes to battery, one of these goes to battery, and then the 2 that are left over get jumped. So, I'm going to hook up the my jumper cables real quick, just to test this one more time. And I probably won't get anything, but I'll do it just to show you guys. Okay, so real quick, I want to test my new motor just to make sure that this complicated setup actually works. So here's the new motor right here. It's one whole case. It even comes with this little bracket over here. So again, to go over the connections right here, the one field is going to go to ground. So I took the ground off the winch and put it on there. The other field is going to get jumped to a stator. So this is one of the stators. You can jump at this one. If you jump it to that one, it just turns the opposite direction. And that's how the winch works. So you jump this post to that post, and then the other stator is going to get positive from the battery. Okay? So by hooking this up and taking the jumper cable, going over here and touching this, you'll get a spark, and the motor works. So that is how you jump a series wound motor. It's a little more complicated than just a positive negative end. So I'm going to do that to the old motor just to show you guys that that one's pooped out. Alright, I couldn't get that negative cable back down in there. There's just not enough room for me to wiggle it in there. So I'm going to do this the other way. I'll show you later that the motor doesn't work when I swap it out. But here's the new motor connected all up, ready to go. So let's test this one instead. See? So the solenoid works, and now the motor works. So we should have a working winch. So with that verified, let's tear this fucker apart. Okay, so in order to remove the motor off of the Q9000 winch, you have 2 bolts up here. They're going to be Allen keys, or Allen heads, I should say. So you got one there and one there. They look like this. And what size are they? They're an S2. If that means anything to... Oh, a 6mm, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you got 6mm Allen head bolts, and you have 15mm regular bolts that hold the bottom of the winch motor. So two of your mounts are going to have to get disconnected. And then your motor will just slide out. And when you slide that motor out, your coil is going to go... So, I'm going to attempt to wiggle this out without removing the rest of the winch. If not, I'll remove the rest of the winch. So, let's pull this motor out. Okay, so here's the old winch motor hooked up the same way. So, we got our ground connected back there on the one field, and then this other field is jumped to this stator, and then this stator is jumped to the positive cable on the battery. So when we touch this on the old motor, you get the little spark, but no spinning. So this motor shot. Must have got rusted on the inside or something fell apart. A lot of wet grease and muck. So, yeah, winch was definitely, the motor was definitely the issue. Okay, so it looks like this end over here got disengaged. So, I think since this is already out, and I got this apart, and the motor was rusted out, I'm sure the gears have got some water in there. So, fuck it. Let's take this whole thing apart, repack the gears over here with some grease. We'll rewind the cable nice and neat, and clean up the bumper underneath. So, I guess I'll take the rest of this thing out. Alright, so here is the other end of the winch. This is all the gear set. So, usually you'll be seeing this part right here. This is the outside, and you will see the bottom part of this. Now, there are a lot of hex heads. I believe these are 4mm, and they're long as fuck. So, if you got a couple Allen key sets to spare, take one, cut the end off, stick it in a drill. That'll make this go 50 times easier. So, yeah. Thumbs up for making your own tools. So, this is what it looks like. You're gonna, once all the bolts are out, take yourself a nice dead blow, put it in vise, and hit the fucker real good. There's a cork gasket that's gonna separate the two halves. And it's put together pretty well at the factory. But also have something ready to catch. When I popped this thing open, water just came pouring out of there. Tons of mud and shit. So, yeah, this thing's definitely been submerged into some shit. So, yeah, that's this side right here. And here is the interior. So, you got a planetary gear set right here that just lifts out. Oh my god. I'm glad I decided to take this one apart. Oh, fuck. Anything else come out? Oh, look, there's still some grease in here. Looks like nickel anti-seize. Anything else? Now, I'm not completely sure if this is true or not, but I think the only difference between the 9000 and the 11000 Q series winches is just the gears. Same motor, I'm pretty sure. Same case size. And the only difference is the gear reduction. Interesting. So, let's clean this monster out and add some new grease. God. Gotta love that milkshake. Alright. I'm gonna clean these up the best I can and then we'll re-grease them. Okay. So this is what everything looks like. I cleaned it all up, and I coated it with a rust preventer. It converts all the oxidation into something a bit more stable. I forget exactly what it is, but I just coated everything. So I'm curious how that's going to go. Hopefully that wasn't a bad decision. I'm hoping that that'll be fine. That'll keep all the rust off. Seal up what was left, but I did that to all of them, cleaned them all out, and they look pretty good now. So, now it's time to put it all together and grease it up. Now, you don't want to fill this entire fucking thing with grease. You want enough grease to be on the gears and everything, but you don't want the whole case covered, because then it'll be extremely hard to free spool it and all that. So you want just enough that everything's nice and greased up. And I'm still torn between what kind of grease I want to use. I have two different kinds here. I got some Valvoline Crimson heavy-duty grease, and I have some Extreme Pressure Molly Graph multi-purpose grease by... Which one do you think I should take, huh? You think I should take this one, huh? Huh. Well, she thinks I should take the black stuff. This says right on there that it's got Molly and graphite in it. This one doesn't say what the hell it has in it, so I'm sure either or could be fine. This is like red and this is gray. I kind of want to use this stuff though. So, let's lube it up and put it together and all that. So this guy goes in there first. Your smallest one goes second. And then this one, third. and then finally this guy fourth. This has got a washer in there that keeps fucking falling out and bouncing around, but that's in there. There's also over here. Anyway, so put together and grease it up. Okay, so here's my grease job. What I did was I'd take just some of the grease out on my finger, rub it on the side of the gear, rotate the gear, get both sides of all the gears, put some on the teeth, rub some around on the rings, and get the inner tubes and all that stuff. I basically just covered every single surface that I could find with grease. And it's not completely filled with it, but all the surfaces that need lubricant are lubricated. I can't really turn the whole assembly just because it is geared so low. But after that, you want to clean this surface off, clean that surface off, and get your cork gasket, put it on there, and we can bolt this thing back together again. Alright, now it's time to put the case halves back together. There's a little bit of rust in there, or not in that end, but I tried cleaning that up a little bit. It's gotta face this way. But there's some rust in there, so I sprayed that down with some of that rust fix, tried to spray it out. You're gonna want to put as much grease as you possibly can on these areas, because that's what keeps this gearbox sealed. And this grease will make a really good sealer on that. So just try to fit as much as you can in there. This Molly stuff is like rated at like 10, super water resistant, so I'm excited to see how that's going to function. But I'm going to bolt it together and then put it on the truck in one unit, because that'll probably make it a lot easier. Just remember, this is going to slide all the way into that gearbox and contact that last little tiny gear. You put that last little tiny gear in there, didn't you? That's the drive gear. Without that, your winch doesn't work. So yeah, make sure this goes in there, hook your motor up into there. I might put a little bit of grease in there too, just to help seal this motor up so it doesn't end up like the last one. So, let's mount it together. Alright, got a decent little bit of grease in there, and on there. So, now the fun part. Sticking it in. Get in there. There she is. Same on the motor end. And if you notice, this has got a double D fitting, so obviously make sure it matches with the double D on the motor. And then you can put your crossbars in to attach the two sides together. Alright, here's a quick tip. First off, make sure your wire's coming out of the right direction. You want it to go from the top out through the bottom. If you wrap this backwards, your winch is not going to work correctly, and it's not going to line up with some stuff. So make sure your rope's still coming out the same way. To keep the nuts in the base of this, I put the nut inside and then put some electrical tape over it, and that'll hold the nut in place so it doesn't fall out. So that'll make it a lot easier to install. Now you can just pick the damn thing up, pop it in there. Wasn't that easy? So, boots are back on. We got some dielectric grease in there so it doesn't fucking rust anymore, hopefully. I cut some notches in the boots to let the water out. That's annoying. I'd like my motor to last. Go underneath, bolt your winch down, give it a test. Oh my god! Now I have to winch this whole fucking thing in. There you go. That's how to fix a fucking winch. Yeah.